You are listening to the Red Pill Chronicles, where we help awakening souls deal with the blue pill world. I'm your host, John Dennison, and together we'll explore how to take an inner approach to your outer affairs so you can build a better life and a better world to live it in. Hi, John here. It's been a while since we talked, but there's a lot going on, and I figured I'd give you a little perspective on how I see things, what's happening in our world, and some of the things that may be happening in you. But there's so much to talk about. I mean, we haven't talked at all in 2020, and frankly, it's been an amazing year in terms of events that have happened, each of which have a reflection to affect us. But we'll get to that later. What do we have? Impeachment, followed by a coronavirus attack with lockdowns, and then we've had bad cops and protests and looting and violence in the streets and anarchy. I mean, at the time of doing this, the Antifa and Black Lives Matter followers have seized several city blocks in Seattle and are setting up shop there. So, I mean, we got lots going on in our world. And this is all without talking about the ongoing civil war between the establishment, or as some people call it, the deep state, to try to remove Trump, who is changing the way things are done there. And I know a lot of people within the establishment are really upset about that. So we could talk about any or all of those things. So the real question is, what's the effect all of this is having on you? Because it can really make you question why you're here. I mean, why did you happen to come into the world at a time when you would have to live through and experience this? This is an amazing time in history because things are happening so fast. Throughout the recorded history of mankind so far, things always took a long time to develop because we had never had the means of communication and travel that we have now, that have developed over the last 100 years. And with that, you see how society has morphed and changed. But the thing that hasn't changed with society is us. We humans are still stuck in the Stone Ages from where we were before. We're still ruled by emotions. We're still ruled by distorted thoughts. We're still ruled by our fears and our desires. And then as a result, we're still engaging in the same activities against each other that we always did, because people always had differences. It didn't matter what the color of their skin was or their ethnic persuasion. I mean, it was fight to survive. And that's what it was in the world, and that's sort of ingrained in all of us. And throughout the course of time, we haven't had to use those attributes as much, but they're still in us. And during times of crisis and times of stress and overload, and when things go really bad, they start erupting, and they come out and then they're directed not in an act of survival. Well, it is an act of survival in a sense. It's trying to keep yourself alive, keep your culture alive, keep the ideas that you want alive, or to bring them into the world, and you're unwilling to be patient enough to work for it. So it's like you want to have it, and you want to have it now. And again, it's that old instantaneous gratification that came from the old, we'll call it the old caveman days, when we had this kill or be killed mentality, and that's the way it was in the world. And those genes or those instincts are still in us, and civilization hasn't weaned those out. So what we're seeing, at least the way I see it in our world, is that we're having a period here where humanity is bringing out for all to see its very worst attributes. Now, it's not our very worst attributes, because we're just warming up for the main events, for mass destruction and killing and mayhem and war. And if we survive it all, then we evolve. We change. We realize from the error of our ways, and we start doing something to try to moderate our own baser instincts. And there are baser instincts within each of us, and sometimes we have them somewhat under control, and sometimes they just run wild in our lives and wreak havoc on the world. And that's sort of what we're seeing with the rioting and anarchy and organized violence, is that this side of these individuals involved are just running wild within them, that they have become so internally polarized toward one particular point of view that they're unable to consider anything other than the ideas that their fears and desires and runaway emotions are causing them to act out. Anyway, that's really how I'm that's how I've been seeing this situation, and it's more like sit back and get the popcorn and enjoy the show, because individually there's not a whole lot any of us can really do to change things. One of the things I realized over my years in practice was that in a conflict, the energies involved in the conflict, the thoughts, the emotions, the different perspectives that made them that way, all those things there's an energy associated with each of those. In a conflict, those energies get supercharged. And there are only two ways to resolve it. Number one, which is they fight it out, and one side wins and the other side loses. And this is what's going on right now. Everybody's trying to do that. They're all trying to prevail. And the other one of which is the energies have to be dissipated in some other way, rather than playing out in terms of the ultimate conclusion. And once they do, those energies can be, transmuted and redirected toward actually trying to work toward peace. But it becomes necessary for the energies to dissipate first. Otherwise, there's very little way that reason can find a crack to get in and start working toward a solution. And we're still in a state right now where all these energies are being released. But at some point they'll either be, they'll continue until they're stopped. They will continue growing. The question is, how do you stop them? How do you release them? And that's part of what's really facing society right now, is how it's going to go about. Because a lot of the within the protests and things, there are seeds of some ideas that many people would love to see. But there are also a lot of ideas that nobody wants, except those that are pushing the most radical upon society. And I understand that, because I hate to date myself, but back during the anti-war movement days, I was one of the more vocal anti-war individuals around. But when it came to the turn toward the violence, toward the confrontations with the cops, which is how we refer to them, or other derogatory terms in those days, police, confrontations with the protesters, and when it came to blowing up buildings or the other stuff that the Students for the Democratic Society and the Weather Underground were taking on, that's where I bowed out. That wasn't me then, that's not me now. But in terms of some of the ideological things that they want to have, such as finding ways to break down some of the barriers that are making it hard for individuals without significant means to find opportunity. That's that's something that, as a society, it's we don't even teach how to do that, much less provide tools. I don't know that it's something the government can do, but opportunity is something that knocks as a result of a whole lot of different attributes. But the most important one is instilling in the individual the desire to look for opportunity and to seize it in a way by which, within the constraints of what a modern society is to look like, such as, that you're not doing it to other people's harm, that you're doing it in a way that is going to expand rather than at someone's expense, that you are doing it in a manner that is relatively conscious, so that you are serving a greater good as well as your own. But then again, the greater good doesn't have to be somebody's idea of what our society should like a social justice warrior may have. The greater good may simply be providing a life and lifestyle for you and your family, or for the people that work for you. Or the customers that you provide for their needs. Those are just as valuable contributions to society as having some wild vision of how we should reorganize things and change everything. And while we know change is happening fast, this last century has just accelerated rapidly since the advent of modern communications and transportation. How the changes are just multiplying at an astounding rate. And it's hard to keep up, particularly us as individuals. It's hard to keep up because we haven't evolved ourselves. And that evolution of ourselves has got to be the inner part of becoming more than we are, at least the more than we know ourselves to be. We're already what we're trying to become, but we're not allowing ourselves to see it or to be it. The distortions of our lives, the scars that have happened to us, the experiences that have left a bad taste in our mouths, the circumstances into which we're born, or which luck drops in our laps or doesn't. Those all play a part in shaping who we are. But our evolution demands that we try to see those as in another context other than just our own survival or contribution to the world. Because those events, all of these events, are occurring so we can evolve. It's time for mankind to finish awakening, or at least start the process of awakening, and to evolve toward higher levels of what it can be. And what are those higher levels? I don't know, but I know they involve love and light in large proportions. And we're just not there yet, because I'm not seeing a whole lot of love going around, and anyone who tries to shine the light is pretty much ignored. The other people put on their sunglasses or turn away. They don't even want to see what you have to see. I mean, if you look at social media, the big problem today is that nobody listens to anybody else. And if they do, it's just to create an argument or make a snappy comeback, which just keeps escalating the tensions between the two sides. There's people who want to fight are going to find somebody to fight with. But the important thing for us as I don't want to say a race. What are we? A species. The important thing for us as a species, humanity, has to begin to make the inner journey individually. But everybody needs to begin to make this journey within. This is a journey that each must come to it at his or her own time and way. But nevertheless, it is essential to evolving. It is essential to working your way back to your Creator. Knowing yourself is knowing God. And knowing God is being one with God. And knowing yourself as God and knowing yourself as the others that you don't know yourself as, but you fight with them anyway. And that is the nature of life, that we use our time here for working toward oneness. I mean, that's what our lives are here for anyway. It's moving us in that direction. But it's time for humanity to awaken and begin to do so consciously, to choose to awaken, to choose to moderate its respective egos, and to choose to find ways of preserving both the individuality of every soul, yet its ability to work together with others, to establish a framework under which everyone can grow and prosper. And it's going to be very, very hard to do this when we are all in conflict, because when you have conflict, there's some win and some lose. Now, I know there's this Marxist philosophy that's been in the country, and it's been raised a lot recently, that says, oh yeah, well, we can solve that for you. Yeah, we can go back, and I'm sure they can. I mean, we can look just like China under the CCP, or the Soviet Union did under Stalin, where there is a group that takes hold and says this is the way it's going to be, and we're going to force you to all be the same. That's not the future that I envision for mankind, but it may be a stage that we have to go through to get to realize that. If Americans, and indeed the rest of humanity, do not value freedom, then they won't stand up for it against those who will try to take it from them. If they don't value their ability to have a say in both their political affairs as well as their economic affairs and the rest of the affairs of their lives, and instead want others to make those decisions for them, then they will have a choice in that as well. I don't tell you how to make that choice. I try to empower you to make it. However, you are being called from within, because we each have a contribution to make to the divine plan of how this world is unfolding. Some of us are here as observers. Others are here to be victims or to be swept about by the winds of fate. And others are here to bring about the changes, or to benefit from the changes, or to try to benefit from the changes. But I would ask you, if you're listening to this, when you are going about trying to understand your role, or your purpose for being here in this body, in this life, at this time in history, in the place whatever place you're at right now, what are you about? What is it that makes you you? You have within you an amazing amount of activity that goes on in every moment that you're probably totally oblivious to. From thought processes to chemical processes to the flow of back and forth flow of inspiration between you and your mind and your soul. There's a lot of this going on that's totally happening beyond the consciousness. Yet it all has a relationship to the life you're living. And your life you're living all has a relationship to that. Because all of these things mix together to make you you. And right now, part of you is in turmoil. It is in turmoil with the life you're living. It is in turmoil with the state of the world around you and the perceived fight to transform it into something better. That's because there are conflicts within you where you're coming down on both sides of the fence on this and on many of the issues. and it goes back to everything in this world. It's a dualistic world. Everything we do, we're at a continuum. We're somewhere at a place in the continuum of energy between one extreme and the other, on every issue. Whether it's an issue of security, whether it's an issue of health and wellness, whether it's an issue of how society should look. We all have different views, and sometimes those views are conflicting within us. Anyway, I got sort of far afield here from where I was trying to go. The question of the day was, should you sit this one out? And I'm referring to the outer wars going on in the streets and in social media and in politics. You know what I'm talking about. It's the growing divide. Well, if the divide isn't growing, the divide's already there. What's happening is the people are they're dumping more and more energy, so that it's appearing that the chasm between them is appearing deeper, because they just keep building the walls higher. Back before Obama was elected, I was writing and speaking that those who wanted peace shouldn't be looking to the extremes of the polarities to bring it to them, because I didn't see that either side was going to defeat the other. Now we are seeing right now, is one side going to win? I don't know. I just see it as continuing to escalate, and both sides are going to fight it out until they can't fight any longer. I don't know that it's going to come down to a civil war type situation where there's going to be an absolute victory, but who knows? Maybe not. It's not up to me to know that. But we just have to deal with what is right now. And what is a growing divide, deepening chasm of energies in antagonism to each other that are just keep clashing and clashing and clashing. And the media just keeps throwing fuel to the fire, and social media allows it to be thrown back. It just keeps getting worse and worse. And people keep building up this energy inside them, because whatever this situation is it's touching something inside them that makes them feel the way that they are, makes them feel that they're under attack and that their worldview is under attack, and that somebody's trying to force their will down their throats, that it's not what they want. I mean, this is really at the heart of everything. Both sides feel the same way about the other, and they probably do. But that's not the point. The point is, if we're to have peace, both sides have to let go of what they want enough to loosen the hold, so that they can begin to search for a ground where peace can be created. Right now, I don't see anything. You can't feed energy into the mob by giving in to demands without first dissipating the energies that are also happening, and they're not. I don't see the concessions as being that some of the local governments are trying to make are really doing much to dissipate the fury that the mob feeds upon. So, but we'll see where that part goes. The thing is, for you, is you got to know yourself. You got to know what it's in this for you. What's happening within you with regard to what's going on around you. And then the hard question comes, which is, well, why do you feel that way? Why do you have those views? This is what a conscious person does, is looks at themselves and says, hey, I see a different perspective, a different energy, between other people out there and me. Well, first, before I can go try to understand them, maybe I should try to understand me as to why I feel the way that I do. And what are the things that go into my decision, and how does then how does all that relate to my own spiritual journey? How does it relate to my relationship with God, or my relationship with myself? I mean, these are the things that an awakening soul ponders before just running and jumping into the fray. Because if they give in to the emotion of the moment and they jump into the fight, and believe me, some people will trigger them, and they're always being triggered. But some people have a way of triggering better than others. Trying to stay out of it. But sometimes they can't because they are still trying to suppress things within them. And most people that are awakening are still in a suppression mode, that those aspects are there. They have to keep them down, push them down. And sometimes they come up and they explode. Or they rear their heads even when you don't want them to. So along your journey, you're going to have to figure out what to do with those parts of yourself. And there are different ways of addressing those. And we can get into some of those in another time. But the means of resolving what's going on in our world is to get more attuned to what is happening inside, where your God is speaking through your soul to you. And if you're not hearing those signals, if you're missing the inner voice, you're not picking up on the urges and the flow of your life, and you're somewhat somehow in conflict with that flow, then you're going to be dissatisfied with your lot, and you're probably going to miss the signals that are there trying to lead you in the direction that's meant for you. So and part of this is setting up a tug of war between the soul and the ego, within each of us, to make us decide, well, which attributes are we going to bring forth and allow to be seen. And when we have these aspects of us that are still wrapped up in those, how would you say, caveman instincts, it's going to be hard to move in a direction where we all can live peacefully together. And therefore it's going to have to happen as a result of the imposition of force or will by some organization, whether it's the police or we bring in Gort from another dimension in a spaceship to burn us to cinders if we try it. Who knows? But we got to find a way to rein in these baser instincts of ourselves and the principles of traveling the spiritual path, of loving and being loved, and treating each other the way you want to be treated yourself, and turning the other cheek. I mean, Jesus taught so many wonderful things. But unfortunately, trying to apply them requires that we change ourselves, because those caveman instincts want us to be something else. So we've got to pick up on the signals that are coming from inside of us. And if it's your time to awaken, or if you have awakened, you've got to be hearing them. You've got to understand it. And if you're not, please, talk to me. I offer a free consultation if you need help. But don't sit there and keep beating your head against that wall of wondering what's going on inside of you, and not even realizing that there's a whole world waiting for you to explore that has a lot to do with how you engage the one that you're in, and how the one that you're in affects you. But you have to understand that you can't run and hide from what's happening in the world right now. This is like an Armageddon that's occurring in each of us. It's occurring between individuals of all races, not just interracial, but intraracial. It's happening in households. It's happening between men and women. And it's happening between countries and alliances. I mean, we're seeing everything is changing. Everything is breaking up because of the energies. The energies that are coming in this have been increasing for the last at least couple of decades, and probably the last 30, 40 years. But they've been particularly intense these last 20 years. And the bonds that hold us together are loosening, because as we change, those bonds are being stretched, and the common things that we hadn't the things that we had in common that held them together aren't as strong anymore. And if they're not as strong, it's very hard to keep all these disparate energies aligned. Look at what happened when Yugoslavia broke up into the different nations there. It happens everywhere. It's everywhere where there's been some sort of a strong authoritative figure that falls away. All of a sudden, that held together all the differing views. Now they're not being held together anymore. And that's been really what's been happening in our society, is that the strength of authority has weakened. So we're moving into a period which is going to be extremely, extremely impactful on all of us. If nothing else, a continual bombardment of your emotions, trying to rile you up and get you dragged into their fight. And believe me, it's easy. And if you have been able to quiet all the outer activity and the inner dialogue, and you start to hear and understand your inner voice, you may actually be called into that fight to take some part in it on one side or another. Polarity is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just depends upon what you're here for in this lifetime. But what I'm trying to offer is a path of balancing those polarities, because only through maintaining a state of balance can you walk the middle path that the Buddha talked about. If there is no state of balance between the extremes, then one stream will take over and completely dominate and wipe out everything that is not aligned with that. And so the other side will fight to the death before that happens. So, yeah, and we're sort of in that kind of a situation right now where everybody's just, the battle lines are getting clear, and we're going to start seeing the fights coming even more openly, and it's going to try to drag us all in, if nothing else other than by social media and the news. So if you're going to watch that stuff or listen to it or read it, you're going to have to learn to do it with a grain of salt and with an emotional detachment, because if you get yourself wrapped up into it, you are going to be swept away, and you're not going to find any peace. Now, it's fun to go fight. I mean, fighting is exhilarating. When I was younger, I was in the martial arts, and we loved to fight. It was a good outlet for all those energies. It's a lot better than fighting in the streets and backyards when we were kids. But martial arts allowed a lot of those energies to be channeled off, just like other sports do. And exercise and yoga, you're taking the body and you're moderating its energies by applying them in something else. You're not allowing them to build up. But in this day and age, this kind of stuff, it just kind of builds up inside you, and there's really nowhere to get rid of it. And now with the lockdowns all over, not everywhere, I should say, the energies are building up even more within people because they have no outlets. So these Black Lives Matter riots have, in fact, there have been mostly protests, but within the protests have been riots and have been looting. So, you could call them whatever you like, but these are basically the COVID riots. These riots have happened because they locked people down and they had no other outlets for the energies. And so all these energies build up and combined with other resentments and things within the communities, and has just taken off. And that's how I see what's happening. But there's no escape from this problem. This is a problem that is going to be in our society until we address it. It's going to lead us to the precipice. And this is my version of Armageddon, which is basically the battles are within us and between us and almost every aspect of our lives. And it's going to be up to those who are awakening to detach from the battles, to find a way to step away from it all. Unless you have to do it to survive and may preserve your own peace and your own ability to have peace or a life that serves you. And then at that stage, then you'll know what to do. You'll kind of be swept along by circumstance. But if you have a choice, my recommendation is to do your best to try to sit it out. I know you're getting material in your timelines, on your social media accounts, that are just getting all riled up. Pray for yourself, for peace of mind, for distance, so that you don't let emotions run away with you. You just can't allow your emotions to control you to such an extent that you lose all reason. And you can't allow other people to control your mind to such an extent that you lose the ability to think and choose for yourself. You're an individual. Individuality is the basis of creation. No matter what we want to try to do to overcome the baser instincts of humanity, nothing is going to change the fact that we all are aspects of God that are here trying to know more about ourselves, our relationships to each other, and to God through the experiences that life brings. And this is truly a time when that takes place on an enormous scale, because everybody's being forced into doing it at the same time. And so we're going to see changes in our world. But if you try to hold on too tightly to what was, you may find that it's going to be a rough ride. When the tide's rising, you don't want to be chained to the bottom. You got to be able to float with the tide, with the waves. You got to ride them to stay on top of them. You can't get swept under. If you're anchored down with beliefs or perspectives that don't allow you to see things in another context, especially not in the context of your own evolution, then you may find yourself getting swamped by some of those waves. So you gotta, and if you do, you're going to need to find your way out. You need to know how to survive, and that's something each one of us has to do for ourselves. We have to figure our own way through this world and through the stuff that's happening. And this is a crazy, crazy time right now. But I want you to know that what is happening now is happening for a reason. And a reason that not only serves you, but serves everyone. Because it is planting seeds of consciousness that are requiring us to re-examine ourselves and examine our relationships with each other and the things that we think and believe that are causing us to not get along. And if we want to survive, we're going to have to figure out how to address those things. Because if we don't, Armageddon may become a reality. And if you didn't do your part to avoid it, then you're probably doing your part to make it happen a little quicker. But I will remind you of the line from the second movie, The Day the Earth Stood Still, where it was supposedly said, when the professor said, when we get to the precipice, we change. Well, we're rushing headlong toward that precipice right now, and I'm trying to show you a way that you can consciously change yourself. And if enough of you out there do, then we can avert this crisis, and we can turn away and figure out another way to move forward together. Because after all, it is all about where we are all going. Where we go all, we go one. Well, we are all going back to God, back to oneness. But the path we take to get there is going to be a bumpy one if we try to do it individually, if we try to all have our own ideas of what it should look like and force those down everybody else's throats. If you want to give justice to your soul, you need to find a way to resolve the role of free will in your life and in your world, and how that operates, and what bounds you are willing to put upon your own freedom. I'm not saying that you have to. I'm saying that others are trying to force you to. But what you must decide for yourself is what your role is going to be in the midst of those efforts. as you decide for yourself where you have to make a stand, if you have to make a stand within this world, then you should do so consciously, based upon the principles that you hold dear, based upon a decision that you do so reluctantly, only because you feel you have to, and that you have been back to a corner with no other choice. Because if you give in to the emotions and the outrage and you just become part of the mob, you're going to set yourself back spiritually. You're going to have to go back and basically start over on the path of consciousness to reflect upon the lessons here, and then hopefully come back in another life and make up for them there, or learn them again the second time around, or the next time around. It may not be the second. Anyway, whatever you choose is okay. If you chose, if it's for you to go out and be part of that fight, then by all means go be part of it. I don't wish you luck in harming anybody else, but I do wish you luck in doing it in a way that opens your eyes as to what's going on inside of you that's causing you to do this, and that you address the inner conditions, the distortions of the light that are flowing into you, that are causing you to be less than loving. Remember what Jesus said. Turn the other cheek. Man, it is so very hard to do. For 2,000 years we've been trying to get people to do that. To turn the other cheek. To love other people as they love themselves. To love, that's very simple. Very simple. Or as Lao Tzu said, to live in harmony with the world, with others, with all. Or Buddha, to relieve yourself of your own suffering by modifying the processes of your mind. Whatever it takes, whatever path will get you there. You know where you're going. You don't need me to tell you that. You can feel this deep inside. But I'm telling you how I have been traveling it and what my path has been and what I've picked up along the way. You might just consider these breadcrumbs. It may not be of any use to you at all. But if you're going to fight consciously. Fight to save yourself. Fight to save the ones you love. Fight to save the beliefs and principles you hold dear. Or get to a place where you don't need to fight. Where all of those will be provided for and taken care of in some way. And that you can trust that God will work things out. And that it's for you to work on you. And to use this time to allow those seeds within you of peace, of love, of light, of awakening to your journey along the spiritual path. To allow those seeds to grow. Nurture them. Use this time to become what's going to be needed to help our world move into a better future. Because if you're just going to be called to go fight out of blind obedience to whatever, or out of emotional whatever. I'm getting to a point I don't even know the terms anymore. Outrage. Then that doesn't reflect any growth on your part. It doesn't reflect you having any control over yourself. And as an awakening soul, if you want to be an awakening soul, or continue to be one, maybe, just maybe, some element of being able to moderate your own behavior might be in order. Anyway, in closing, in answer to my question, should you sit this one out? You should sit this one out unless you are called to fight, or if you are swept along by some inner condition within you that is triggered by it all, that you have to act out to see where it leads you. Those are the only two situations under which you should join it. Otherwise, try to take the middle path until it's forced upon you. Know yourself. Listen to your inner voice. These are the signals that are going to tell you which way to go. These are the signals that lead you along the spiritual path as well. It's your choice whether to hear them. It's your choice whether to follow. But they're trying to take you where you want to go, if you let them. One day we'll all get there. Thank you for listening. I appreciate you coming. Go with love. You have been listening to the Red Pill Chronicles, where we help awakening souls move in a better way through a blue pill world. For more information, visit us at peaceoptions.com to explore how you can find your peace through knowing yourself and following your inner voice. Or at missionlaunch.com, where we offer coaching and consulting to help you make the difference in your world.